California has turned election day into election open season. They're telling the rest of America, don't ask questions, just trust us. Ballots can arrive late, counts can move for days on end, final results can take weeks. Third parties can collect ballots, which is called ballot harvesting. Most voters don't show identification at polls to even vote. And when the Department of Justice is asking to inspect the voter rolls, as of last year, California is fighting back in court. That is the issue. A secure system should survive any type of scrutiny. So today, we're going straight to the prosecutor in California for the truth. Joining me now is Bill Essayli, First Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Central District of California. Bill, thank you so much for joining today. I really want to talk to you about California elections. We know that they're under federal scrutiny, and we're getting a lot of national attention too, because not only are we looking at elections, but President Trump is pushing for the SAVE Act. I know before the president even started pushing to ensure that citizenship was a requirement to vote, California was hiding their voter rolls from the DOJ since last year. Hermeet Dillon has been requesting voter roll access. And your office is actually on the record saying that there are multiple election fraud investigations underway. California officials continue to say elections are secure. I actually looked into your law. It looks like ballots can arrive after election day. The count can change for days. Final results can take weeks. Third parties can return ballots, which I think is called ballot harvesting. And then ballots are proactively actually mailed to registered voters. And to top it all off, California voters are not required to show identification. So, for the purposes of your office, what have you recognized through your elections and what fraud are you seeing specifically in your state?
Yeah, so for my purposes, I can only talk about what we've publicly charged. So the stuff that's currently under investigation, we can't speak about that to preserve the integrity of that. But what we have seen, and this is documented now, is on the voter fraud front. We brought charges just about a month ago against an individual, a woman, who was caught on video down in Skid Row paying homeless people money to register to vote with some false information. And that's just a little slice into the type of voter fraud that we're talking about. And really what you mentioned is so important. It's California laws that are facilitating this fraud because in other states you cannot do the stuff that's allowed to happen in California with the ballot harvesting and the mail ballots and this sort of thing. So California has basically what I will call decriminalized voter fraud or a lot of things that people consider voter fraud. The states have a lot of leeway as to how they want to run elections. And so California has just taken off all the safeguards that most states have to reassure the public that only eligible US citizens are registered to vote and casting ballots in an election.
But federal law requires US citizenship to vote. Isn't that correct?
That is federal law, and California will claim they comply with that law. But when we ask, are you auditing? Are you making sure? And when you look at California's own laws and regulations, you can clearly see that there isn't much of a barrier for non citizens to register to vote. Start with the DMV. They're basically registering everyone who interacts with the DMV as a voter. And they were caught about 5, 6 years ago registering non citizens who got driver's licenses to vote, and they had to go and take them off the voter rolls. And those are just the ones they caught and admitted to. And then they wrote this law that says if you're a non-citizen and you get accidentally registered to vote in a DMV, you cannot be criminally charged. So
Mhm.
they've given immunity to people registering to vote at the DMV. Then you look at what documentations the California Secretary of State will accept as proof of that you're an eligible voter. And you can go on their website, you can register to vote without a driver's license, without a social. And the first time you vote, you do have to present what they call an identification. But the list of what they accept as IDs is ludicrous. You're talking about gym card memberships, you're talking about a prescription drug label, you're talking about a health insurance card, which California gives health insurance to illegal immigrants. So there's nothing in the rules in California that prevent non-citizens to vote. So instead, what they do is they just gaslight. They just say,
Mhm.
"Well, you guys are making this up. This isn't a real problem. Don't make it one." It's sort of what they did on the hospice fraud. First, they said there is no hospice fraud. Then when we started charging all the cases, they said, "Yeah, but it's not that bad, and there's fraud in other states too." And so they keep moving the goalpost. And what we're trying to do here at the Department of Justice is just ensure that federal law is being enforced. So we are going to investigate and prosecute all cases that we have of election fraud. We will make those cases. We are also trying to enforce the federal voting rights acts, and that's why we are trying to audit California's voter rolls to make sure they are in compliance with those federal laws that require only US citizens to be on the ballots.
Mhm.
That's a civil statute. So that's not a criminal, it's a civil statute. And we are in court litigating with California. They are resisting, they're refusing. And so we're up on appeal on that right now. So there's a lot happening in this space. It's not just one thing. The media, the left wing politicians want you to just think there's nothing to see here. If there is fraud, it's just a couple outliers, nothing to see here. Let's certify the election. Let's move on. That's what they want. And we're
Well,
saying,
yeah,
hold
and I
on
think
a
what's
minute.
interesting
Yeah.
is what you noted earlier, Bill, about even how to register. So, over the weekend, I looked for the cheapest gym in LA. I live in Ohio, and I actually got some advice from a friend and called Crunch Fitness. So, for $15, I wanted to know about registration. Do I have to show proof of citizenship? What requires a membership to a Crunch Fitness? And guess what? You don't have to show anything except come in, fill out an online form, come in either personally or fill out an online form. So, what this looks like is allegedly an illegal alien, that's what they are, come into our country. The first act is breaking the law, and then they can go right to California and sign up for healthcare benefits. In addition to that, go to a Crunch Fitness, and for $15, they are now registering to vote in California. Is that what's happening in your state?
That is what you just laid out, that fact pattern. That is how it could happen. And that is what we're looking into. And we are looking into specific instances of that. But the only way to know for sure how widespread this issue is and to confirm that that is not happening at a massive scale is to audit the voter rolls. And that's why Harmeet and I have been laser focused on this issue, and we've been litigating for a year. Right now, we're in the Ninth Circuit. We hope to, hopefully have it resolved soon. But until we get our hands on the voter rolls to where we can audit it, none of us can tell you how widespread this issue is. We do
Well,
have
though my
individual
biggest concern
circumstances.
here to interrupt, my biggest concern here, though, is the midterms. So you've
Yeah.
been litigating for a year. How do you accelerate this? So if the Ninth Circuit does push back on voter roll access, how do you accelerate this to the Supreme Court? What's the legal strategy here? And what's the legal basis for
Yeah.
California and Gavin Newsom saying elections are secure and pushing back on the Civil Rights Division at the DOJ and your office?
Well, their reasoning is ludicrous. They claim that it violates their own state privacy laws to comply with the federal law, which federal law supersedes any state law. So the basis is ludicrous,
Right.
but they have found some lower level judges to agree with them, and that's why we're up on appeal. So we're hoping for a decision soon. We hope they get it right and we're done with it. Otherwise, you're right. We're going to have to either go en banc or go to the Supreme Court. That those decisions are left to the Office of the Solicitor General, and the civil rights section there will have to figure out the best strategy forward. But we want to get this resolved as quickly as possible. And I think that's the frustration you're sensing from the president and others, is that not enough is happening in this space quickly. Ultimately, Congress has the most power. They could change the law, they could write a new law. And I think there's some proposals on that. And the president has said he supports those heavily. And then, also in California, they could change the law. And if the legislature doesn't want to change the law, the voters can try to change it through ballot initiative as well. And I think there's a proposal in that regard as well. But at the
Well,
Department of Justice, we're limited with the laws as written by Congress. So we cannot
right.
do anything other than what we've been empowered to do by Congress.
Well, what does this lawsuit do if the SAVE Act does pass Congress? Is this something you're willing to drop? Because then it's mandatory to make sure that only US citizens are voting in elections. Just walk us through that very quickly.
Yeah, well, let's be clear. It's mandatory now that only US citizens are
Correct.
voting in elections. I think
Not
what we're
in
talking about is
California based on your law.
Well, the problem is the enforcement mechanism, and Congress didn't
Right.
put a lot of teeth into that law. So the law says you have to be a US citizen to vote. But how do you enforce it? How do you ensure that's happening? Well, the laws as written say that you're supposed to show your records to the Attorney General upon request. They're refusing. So the SAVE Act would be a whole new framework, and I think we'd really have to look to see what the final language is of that to determine whether or not this lawsuit would still be needed or not. But that's what they're debating in Congress right now. But yeah, if you had voter ID, if you had to show actual proof of citizenship at the time of voting, that would be the safest, most secure way to ensure compliance with the law.
Well, Bill, we're going to be watching your work here. I know that there's a lot of other cases, and many people think this is just related to Spencer Pratt or even Steve Hilton in California, but there's national implications given that you have one of the largest states, massive number of voters on your rolls, and it's about time for transparency. So we're going to be looking very closely at what occurs, whether it's the Ninth Circuit that's ruling with you or just more clarification through the SAVE Act so that your governor can do the right thing and make sure US citizens are the ones voting and there's proper verification.
Absolutely. I think voters have to have confidence in the results of the election, regardless of who wins and who loses. And this system we have now that breeds skepticism and doubt into the winner of an election is not healthy. It's not healthy for the right, and it's not healthy for the left. People have to be able to govern, and you're not going to be able to govern if people don't have any confidence that you're legitimately elected to your position. So this is a very important issue. Regardless of which side you're on, I hope everyone would agree we should want fair, free, and honest elections.
Well, thank you for your time. I really think California is a national warning sign for the rest of the country, and your work is really important for election integrity. So excited to see what comes next in terms of indictments and enforcement.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.